Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to talk about Stout Hearts, which is a game designed by Jay Ward and published by Tiny Battle Publishing. Going to give you my thoughts on it after playing it a few times, and I'm just finishing up this latest game, and I figured, this is a great time to stop and talk about the game and my impressions of it so far. Really enjoying it. I think it's a lot of fun. The interesting aspects of it is you have to get across the field, take out 3 lines of German resistance. You have the outer line here, the initial line, you have the main line of resistance here, then you have the reserve area here. And as you're going along, you will be able to use assets and things like that you'll pull in. I've kind of gone back and forth on using the assets. Sometimes I use them heavily, sometimes I don't. In this one, I didn't really use them that heavily. I just kind of wanted to try some different things this time and kind of force my way across with some brute force, and good rolls were on my side after the initial bad rolls I had here, which didn't really make it easy to get through this initial line. And that's something I've noticed on the outset in this game, is it's hard to get going, but once you do, it's kind of like you start going downhill. The gravity starts to assist you a little bit, and you start gaining a lot more momentum. And that really comes into play with the artillery barrages, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But essentially what you're doing here is you are the center battalion. There are 2 battalions on either side of you, and you are basically pushing up through the middle. This is set in Normandy after D-Day, and that's why I've got these flanks here on either side. This is going to show you the progress of the sister battalions on either side of you, and you need to make sure that you are ahead of them along the way, because you don't want to get behind them. If you do, you're going to lose points, and that's going to hurt you in the end. And as I said, what you got to do is you got to get through this initial outpost line. Then you have the main line of resistance here. Then you have the reserve units here at the end. You try to clear them all out. You want to get these objectives here, and there's some in the resistance area or the reserve area. You want to take those for points, and then also if you can exit units off the map, you'll get an extra 5 points for each of the units that you do get off the map. And that's what I'm kind of in the process of setting up here. Charlie Company's actually done well. They've pushed up the right flank, and that was after a lot of difficulty at first. They had difficulty getting through this initial line of 3 units. They ran into a couple of counterattacks that they had to get through. Then went up here, they ran into a couple of counterattacks they had difficulty getting into. They were falling behind on the flanks, and then finally broke free, and we were able to push up that right side pretty well. And while I'm talking about counterattacks, I'll just mention what that is in this game. You have these different objectives, not objectives, but you have these different hexes, different colored hexes. We have blue here, yellow here, and then orange in the reserve area. As you take these enemy areas, once you take control of them, you'll roll and you determine if you get a counterattack. Counterattacks come in 2 forms. You'll either get a mortar attack or an actual counterattack of ground forces. Mortar attacks are actually not too bad. Usually, they're only gonna hit you on a 5 or 6, but counterattacks can be 1 or 2 units depending on the die roll. And those can be problematic, because if they get a unit in here and you can't root them out immediately, you're going to be stuck with them. So that's one of the things that I think is really cool about the game. It's not just blow through the enemy that's there, take the spot and move on. You're going to have to also deal with counterattacks, and that could actually hold you up, which is what happened with Charlie Company here. Now, you see here, this is the company track. That's where you see what your strength is, your current strength. Alpha and Bravo companies, they took a beating. They had difficulty getting through as well, and they took some casualties. I kept Delta Company, which is at a full strength of 10. I kept them in reserve, and I just went with Alpha, Bravo, Charlie companies, pushed them up, and right now I've got Delta up here as well. They're going to do a passage of lines into the reserve area, so that way they can try to knock out these guys here, and if they can at least get the 1 here, they can take 2 more objective hexes here. Charlie will try to take that other objective here, but main thing is if I can get this guy out and kind of set Delta as like a blocking force, then I can get these units off. You got Alpha Company right here. I can get them off and get an extra 5 points per unit. So that's what my thinking is here. I'm down to turn 11. So I've got 4 more turns till the game's over. I have 1 more barrage here on turn 13. And the barrages, you're given 3 of those, 3 artillery barrages that you pre-plot before you get out on the field. And you basically just set the game turn that the barrage is going to happen on. I'm finding that third turn is actually the best, really, because it's going to take you a couple turns here to kind of push through here. sometimes a little bit longer. Sometimes you're going to get through on the first one. All depends on die rolls, but you want to get through this area and then start your push into the MLR. And that's when, like I said, turn 3 is about when it's going to happen. You're going to be like a couple hexes away. Then you drop some artillery on these guys. That suppresses them so you can move in. And that's when you can take them out, because they're going to be denied the use of these buildings as an additional, or the terrain as an additional defensive benefit. So those barrages can be really, really effective if you get successful barrages. And then you can just jump on those guys with extra guys and make sure you have your supporting fires in place, which is another thing I like about it. Not only from the asset perspective, but also that you have 3 platoons for each company, and you want to make sure that you're using supporting fires as well as your movement element. So you have your base fire and you have your maneuver element. I think it's really cool how that is reflected in the rules and how it all works out. And the other thing, as I mentioned with these flanks, I do like that aspect of the game too. It adds that little bit of pressure. You've got to keep moving along the lines, because you know higher headquarters is going to be screaming at you down here as the battalion commander. You need to move your men up. You need to keep pressing the attack. So I like how that little aspect of the game adds a little bit more pressure by penalizing you with points, but really it becomes kind of an ego thing as you're playing. You're like, no, these guys are not going to get ahead of me. But again, that's all going to be based on die rolls. I had several ones here where there's no adjustment of the flank, and then on the other side they were ahead a few times, and then I was able to get past that, and now I'm staying ahead of it, which is good. And you'll see the Germans are not all shown. We only have one that's shown. What happens is, once you move within the Zoc of 3 of the Germans, once you move within 2, you're going to roll and see what happens. You may go static, which is basically kind of disrupted. You just flip your unit, and then you have to rally them back. And then if you get the other roll, which I did in this instance, it will show the unit. So it's kind of like, almost like you're using it as a reconnaissance tool. You move up, and maybe you get the opportunity to flip the counter over. Now, not always is that good. Sometimes there'll be a forward observer there, and they'll call in an artillery strike on you, and that sucks. So you don't want to have that happen. But hey, you've got to flip them one way or the other. So that's just luck of the draw. And you've got those 3 containers up there, 3 draw containers. You're going to randomly pull them out. This is A, this is B, and this is C. The other thing that's pretty cool is, as you take a unit out, on the one side, it'll say, like, this guy doesn't. He's got nothing on it. But you can't really see anyway unless I pull one of the counters out. I'm not going to bother with that right now. But on one side, it'll show you A, B, or C on the left-hand side where that counter goes, which container. In the B container, which would be here in the center, if you take it out, whether it's through a regular unit out there or a counterattack, it could tell you to put it in the C container. So you put it in the C container, that is a unit you may see again. And there's a good mix of units out there. You have some tank killers, you got some armor, you've got different types of infantry, you got forward observers, like I was saying, machine gun units. It's a really good mix of units that you're going to have to go up against. And you add in the terrain that you're going to have to be going through, which is usually going to be in really good defensible positions, whether it's woods or in buildings. That's going to be difficult. That's why you've got to really maintain your lines and move them up, and then use supporting fires as well as assets and your assault units effectively if you're going to take them out. And again, that's what I really like about this game. It really makes you think about moving your units as a whole in different units, different groups, I should say, to take out different sections, blow those holes through, and move up the map. And once you've played the game enough times, I think you start getting a feel for when is a good time to put those artillery barrages out. Like I have it here on 13. I probably could have gone a little bit sooner, but I've been putting them at 3, 7, and 13, or 3, 8, and 13 is where I've kind of been finding the sweet spot. Now, even though I'm on game turn 11 right now, what I've done is I've not pressed any further. I've just kind of done like an operational halt to bring Delta Company the rest of the way up, so that way I can pass through the other units there and move them into position to start their assault on these German positions. There's nothing that's making you continue the attack other than the time limit of 15. So I can sit there a couple turns, pause, and wait till the barrage comes in, drop the barrage, hopefully suppress these units, move in, assault, and then I can open it up. But then again, I'm only down to 2 more turns. So that could be a little difficult if I don't get through clearly and take out those Germans. And one of the other things you can do is when you take that operational halt is you can rally your units and try to gain strength back on your companies. That's something I haven't done here. I'm just kind of pushing my guys and trying to just continue on and not try to rally them up right now because I've got that strong Delta company. I still have a good strength with C company, and they're going to be pressing on that right side to try to get through. They've got Bravo company as well that's just kind of hanging out. And if I can get these guys out as well, or at least that one on the right, I can try to run him off the map up to the right, hopefully by the end of the game. But like I said, really had a good time playing this game. It's a lot of fun. I like how it makes you think through supporting fires and moving your companies as a group and using them in different ways. You have your base of fire, your maneuver element, like I said, your offboard assets, and the big artillery strikes. All of that together makes you think through not only the move that you have now, but the moves ahead. And I think that's pretty fun. It's not an expensive game. It's a great little game, small little footprint game, as you can see, but a lot of fun and definitely a game you can replay multiple times. So if you are looking for a small footprint game that's solitaire specific, definitely give a look to Stout Hearts from Tiny Battle Publishing. It is a lot of fun. Well, I hope that helps you guys out if you've been curious about this one. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.